and small children die. My youngest is 6 years old and I cannot hide him. And I have 7 children.
From morning we have heard some explosions, and after that we thought that something bad is going to happen, and we left Kiev. We're from Georgia, and now we'll transfer to Georgia somehow. I don't know.
Most of the refugees are traveling to West in countries like Poland, Germany or Italy. Others choose free local accommodation, such as hotels or local homes.
We have sandwich, fruits, water, milk, chicken.
Is it enough for the refugees?
Until now, it's enough for everybody.
The distance between the Ukraine-Romania border and Kiev is only 500 kilometers. Claudiu Popa, Euronews Romania.
Europe is witnessing what could become the largest humanitarian crisis on the continent in many years. That was the warning from the European Commission as thousands flee the fighting in Ukraine. More than 360,000 have already left the country. 200,000 of them have headed across Poland's border. But the EU must brace itself for far more.
As for humanitarian situation overall, currently expected number of displaced Ukrainians is over 7 million people. And in the worst case scenario, if this war of aggression continues, they will find themselves in urgent need of humanitarian assistance.
As a result, the European Commission has strongly advised member states to cut red tape for Ukrainian citizens fleeing from the war to safety. In fact, all 27 nations in the bloc have decided to accept Ukrainian refugees without asylum applications. The decision was agreed unanimously, following a meeting of its interior ministers. The open-door style policy will remain in place for up to 3 years. The EU is also going to make funds available to support the countries on the front line of the refugee crisis. Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Romania are also opening their borders to let in those trying to escape the fighting.
Last week, the EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said sanctions against Russia would have a strong and immediate effect. And that appears to be the case with the ruble plummeting in markets this morning. Anka Ulia has been following the rise and falls, and she joins me now in the studio. Anka, tell us, why are we seeing this meltdown?
Well, first off, let's just talk about how significant this meltdown has been. The ruble dropped more than 30% against the U.S. dollar since Friday's close. It's at its weakest level in history against the U.S. dollar. So you can see that steep drop at the end of this chart that's going to load right here. So that is Monday's open. It has recovered a bit as trading got on in Asia. But I think what this means is that we're starting to see the effects of sanctions from the West. So from freezing Russia's financial assets and excluding some Russian banks from SWIFT, which of course is that messaging system that facilitates international transactions, the ruble dropping is a symptom of wider panic inside and outside of Russia. The fear here is that there will be a complete meltdown of the Russian economy, and that could have knockoff effects on other economies as well. Concerns that bank cards will no longer work, that payment methods like Apple Pay will no longer work. There will be a cash shortage, that the Russian central bank won't be able to liquidate its assets in order to cushion this blow. I think that is the biggest fear here.
Okay, so how's the government responded to this?
Well, Russia's central bank is trying to limit that fallout. It's more than doubled its base interest rate from 9.5% to 20%. It's also blocked foreign investors from selling securities on Russian markets. So it's important to note here that 45% of Russian stocks and bonds are actually owned by non-residents. The central bank also saying that it will support banks by supplying cash. It says that it's going to release $7 billion worth of rubles from its reserves. But the problem here is that it may not be able to liquidate those assets. Some of these sanctions from the West have frozen Russian assets. The Russian central bank has these massive reserves of foreign currencies and gold worth up to $640 billion. But if they can't liquidate them because they're frozen, then they won't be able to collect that cash and to raise those funds.
But what would be the wider effects of this?
Well, the wider effects that we're seeing, so inside Russia, of course, as usual, normal people are really going to be suffering a lot from these sanctions. Inflation will grow, purchasing power will diminish. So you're going to see a lot of Russians having trouble to buy basic goods. The price of imports also will be increasing, so that for Russian businesses and businesses functioning in Russia that aren't necessarily run by Russians are going to have a lot of trouble conducting their business. And of course, we know that the economy is global, so this won't just be Russian companies, but a lot of European companies are also going to bear the brunt of these sanctions. For example, France is the 35 out of 40 of the biggest companies in France that are listed on the CAC 40 have significant Russian investments. Also on the DAX in Frankfurt, only 2 out of the 40 companies listed on the DAX don't have investments in Russia. So we're going to see a lot of blowback from these sanctions in Europe as well, which I think is why we saw a lot of hesitancy from Western leaders when it came to these sanctions, especially the SWIFT system, because they're really going to be feeling it as well.
That's it for now. Another reminder, of course, that we're here throughout the day bringing you the latest developments on Russia's war in Ukraine. Do stay with us and also check out our website, Euronews.com.
Ready, and we know that Russia didn't expect our nation to rise up so quickly and so actively. Ordinary people, as well as actors, singers, and movie directors, left their homes and are helping the territorial defense.
Russian troops have been advancing towards this town from the south of Ukraine, and people in Dnipro know that they could be next in the line of fire. And they're working hard to make their city a symbol of Ukraine's resistance.
That's Catherine Norris-Trent reporting for us there. Now, the European Union is warning that over 7 million people could be displaced as a result of the war. 500,000 have already fled across the country. Many of them are now in Poland. The government there has waived visa requirements for Ukrainians and is offering free transport in the country. Peter O'Brien has this.
The wait is excruciating. Not far from the border with Ukraine, Polish authorities deliver bus after bus of refugees, and some families are reunited. Others are taking the bus back the other way. Polish border guards say 200,000 people have already crossed from Ukraine, and they've been welcomed with open arms. At the train station, volunteers are handing out bags of drinks, food, clothes and other necessities.
I really wanted to help, and so I went shopping and bought some stuff for people.
It's the same story of solidarity over in Hungary, where more than 70,000 refugees have arrived. Hungarians have rushed to the border to offer hot food, free lodging and rides to Budapest. Hungary and Poland have exempted Ukrainians from their usually strict asylum requirements. Meanwhile, the queues to get out of Ukraine seem endless. The EU says the war could displace 7 million people.
Well, that's it from us here in the newsroom. Up next on France 24, my colleague Mark Perelman interviews the former Ukrainian president, Petro Poroshenko.
Hello and welcome for this special edition of the interview here on France 24. Our guest today is the former president of Ukraine, Petro Poroshenko. He joins us from the streets of the Ukrainian capital, Kiev. Thank you very much for being with us today, Mr. Poroshenko.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much indeed. for supporting Ukraine and delivering truth about events in Kiev and in Ukraine for my nation. Thank you.
Yes. So exactly where are you, and what is the situation in Kiev where you are right now?
I'm in the center of Kiev. It is about 800 meters from the governmental quarter and about 4 kilometers from the Russian troops. Exactly now you see that we have an air raid alert because of the Russian bomber. And you know that today is the from the 24th of February, today is the 5th day of the aggression, and all these days we have Russian missiles launching from Belarus and from Russia, and we have Iskander, we have an air raid which is heated Ukrainian civilian, and unfortunately about 500 civilians is already killed during this 5 days of war.
Right. Are you personally forced to sleep in a shelter as most of the inhabitants of the capital?
No, I'm staying in my party office, former party office, which is now the headquarters of the battalion of the territorial defense. I'm in this battalion, I'm organizing this battalion, and today we have lots of Kievites, peaceful Kievites, who is decisive to protect our nation. But I want to thank growing Western support, which come to Ukraine in the very difficult time, in the maybe the most difficult time of our history. This is happening from the very first day and hours even of the invasion, and the strong support is stopping, I hope, the attempt of Putin to ignite the World War III, and we are demonstrating that we are not afraid Putin. We don't trust Putin. Putin is weak when we are together. And this is the absolutely great chance to demonstrate that when we united, when you are ready to present the sanction, when you're ready to present assistance, this is extremely important. And I want to thank here a very good friend of Ukraine and friend of mine, President Republic Macron, the Chancellor Scholz, and all the leaders of the important decision yesterday, which was delivered by Ursula von der Leyen, who first time in the history of European Union make a decision to pay and to deliver to Ukraine the lethal weapons, who can stop the aggressor and who can increase the price for Putin and for Russia, for Ukraine. Because Putin has launched an aggression not only against Ukraine, Putin launched an aggression against the EU, against France, and against the whole civilized world. And we here paying maybe the heaviest price, but we are protecting here also the freedom, the democracy, because the only thing of Ukraine is just we want to be free. We want to return back to the European family, and this is the reason why Putin hates us.
Right. Are you surprised, Mr. Poroshenko? I mean, you were president for years and you asked for more European support, that in a very, very quick succession, you had tough sanctions and you now even have weapons to be delivered. The EU foreign policy chief even mentioned fighter jets. I mean, this is quite incredible just in the space of a few days.
No, I'm not surprising. First of all, I'm proud that me and my team create Ukrainian army, and I'm proud the ability of defense and ability to hit Putin troops, which we demonstrate in delivering the evidence that Ukraine now has one of the strongest army in Europe. And that's why, by the way, this is the absolutely necessary decision to present to Ukraine membership action plan to NATO, because the would be a mutual beneficial cooperation, because with Ukraine, NATO would be stronger. And I think that this is extremely important, that at least you have a first